So I think that wraps up the similarity section, does it?
Hmm. I think so.
Oh yeah.
Who wants to go first with the differences? So okay, the game is that if the differences overlap, you got to strike it off. So you don't get a that's not yours anymore. So whoever says it first, it belongs to that person.
Okay.
Okay.
So
All right.
who wants to go first?
Well,
Honestly.
me?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I kicked off the similarities. It's only
Yeah.
fair.
All right.
All right. So I already kind of spoiled my first one. But it
Oh
was
yeah.
no oval tracks in India. And we
Yeah.
just talked a little bit about why I love NASCAR and love oval racing. I guess I'll add something to that, which is that beyond NASCAR, like amateur dirt oval racing is some of the most fun racing in the world to watch. It is
Oh.
so prolific, like so prolific in the United States, to where there's like, if you want to go on Google right now and like search up, dirt oval track and then a state, any state in the United States, and you're going to find them everywhere in rural cities, and people are building, backyard shed race cars and bringing them onto dirt ovals, and you can actually, I mean, I don't want to misrepresent it like you can get rich doing this, but you can actually make, if you're really good on a dirt oval, you can make a decent living racing on dirt ovals because those races actually have prize money, unlike most races in the world. Like, if you win a dirt oval race, now you're going to have to win a couple heat races and then win the final race, and there's probably going to be, ultimately 80 competitors you're going to have to beat out, so you got to be the best guy to get it. But there might be a $10,000 prize at the end of the weekend, and if you travel around the United States going to different events every weekend and you can win 9 times out of 10, you might actually be able to afford to maybe not live off of it, but at least to continue racing. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's one of the
I
huge
had a question though.
yeah.
So are these dirt racing tracks, are they built for actually racing, or is it like a multi-purpose thing? It's actually an athletics track, and you just throw mud on it, and it becomes a dirt bike or something.
No, they're actually fully built for racing. Yeah. They're
Wow.
yeah.
Uditt, can
They,
you believe
they
this?
I can. In fact,
Oh my
I
God.
was watching one of the Grand Tour series, and these guys visited some part of America. I think
Mhm,
Arizona or some place where these guys were doing buggy racing in an oval. So like
mhm.
when Jared says that there's an oval involved and there are Americans there, there is going to be racing. No matter where you are, even if you are like in the middle of water and there is like an oval kind of a space there, those guys were racing buggies in the water, in the lake, in the swamp, in an oval.
Mhm.
I mean, how crazy
Yeah,
is that?
yeah.
Like,
No, oval
It sounds
racing is
amazing,
so,
to be honest.
it's fun too. Like, it's really, really, really fun to oval race. I mean, I haven't gotten the up. I say this like I've been out on a dirt oval car on an oval track in real life. I haven't. I wish I have. I just haven't had the opportunity yet. Um, but taking it back to the sim, I've gotten to experience some of what it feels like doing like basic street stock racing on iRacing
Mm.
and some other racing like midget racing and stuff like that. The the way
did I
that the cars drive,
did I get that wrong, or did you say midget racing?
yeah, midget. It's called midget cars. They're like a very specific type of oval car. It almost looks like a toy car. It's like very tiny. These very tiny little cars with very, very, very powerful, very, very powerful, very tiny cars that just fly around these tracks.
The
But you're
smallest.
basically on these dirt oval tracks. On some of them, you're pretty much drifting the entire race.
Oh,
Like, you're just sliding sideways on the dirt in a circle
is it one of
and having to
those?
control
Is it one of those with a huge ass spoiler on the roof? Is it that what you're talking about?
That's a sprint car, but it's pretty much it's a very similar thing. It's very very similar.
Right.
All of those are around the same. The dirt oval community is a huge thing. I mean, go watch a World of Outlaws race. Like look up World of Outlaws racing, and you'll find that's like the top level series that you can find. Um, and you might see like some NASCAR drivers, like some really big NASCAR drivers, still during the NASCAR season go and compete in these like World of Outlaws dirt racing events because a lot of them grew up dirt racing, and sometimes they go home and win the events. And that's obviously a crazy thing to think about too, because F1, you're never going to see an F1 driver participate in any other motorsports event, even in the off season. But in NASCAR, there's probably, twice the amount of races that F1 has in a season. Not twice the amount, but at least a third more races. And drivers will still go out and participate in the Daytona 24-hour and a dirt racing event that they want to do, or they'll go do SRX or GT4 or whatever. It's
Yeah.
I like that about
Yeah.
NASCAR too.
Yeah, we can.
F1 drivers used to do it, but now
I know.
it's oh,
Now
okay,
they're
that's
too
fucked up.
uppity.
I mean,
Yes, they are too
was it
uppity. I
was
think
it
that's the
ever
right word.
since was it ever since Kubica?
Yeah, I think it is actually
I
ever since Kubica, basically,
Is
because
it? I thought it was much before.
well, no, because that's how Kubica broke his hand. He was doing a rally event and then broke his hand. So I think that probably what happened is the team started
Yeah,
putting it in the
contract.
contracts that
Yeah,
they're not allowed
Restrictions.
to
Yeah, yeah.
to do extreme sports like that.
they should also start banning snow-related sporting events and all of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
trauma.
Well, I mean, it makes you think sometimes, like. So like Lance Stroll breaking his hands when he was riding a mountain bike. Like normally I think mountain biking is something that they would put in one of those contracts that you're like not allowed to do if you're an F1 driver. And then I was thinking, my whole thought process, I was thinking, okay, well he probably has an exemption because it's basically his team, so he can do whatever he wants. But then Valtteri Bottas like races and does these like long bike races and off road. Um, and he's only really seems like he's been doing them since he got to Sauber. And it makes me wonder if maybe his Mercedes contract didn't let him, but his Sauber contract does, or something like that. I don't know for sure. I mean, this is like totally hypothetical, but yeah,
Yeah, maybe
I could
that's
be
true.
terribly wrong, but I thought because his girlfriend's now a athlete as well.
yeah,
She's a
She was always
yeah,
a cyclist, right?
yeah. She's a professional
yeah,
cyclist. Yeah,
yeah,
I think they started dating
but
though after
they around
Mercedes.
the
Yeah, I
same
think
time,
you're
yeah.
right. Yeah, so maybe it was.
Around the same time the calendar started coming out, the Valtteri Bottas calendars.
Oh my god.
I would love to have one of those. But
Christmas.
Yeah, me
I
too.
would pay money for it.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, that's a really good point over there about drivers and everything. And I hope we have the
yeah.
time to discuss about safety and stuff like that. Because I just saw. Did you see qualifying yesterday for the 24 hours of the 12 hours of Sebring?
No, I didn't see the qualifying yet.
Do,
I have to go back and watch it.
there's one of these LMP cars. I think it was a Porsche. It has it. It's taking this. I think it was turn one. It's a
Yep,
left-hander, sharp
I know
left-hander,
it very well.
and
Yeah,
there was
very tough corner.
and yes, and there was sand on the exit, and the corner is also bumpy, so the car is bumping around. The car bumps and then lands one of the rear tires into the sand and just spins, and while spinning, hits the barrier, then spins the opposite direction, and then finally comes to a halt. Nothing happened to the driver. Okay, some things happened to the car, but it did not tear into pieces. Like it was still structurally intact. It could,
Mm-hmm.
there was no need for a professional cleaning crew. You just had like two trucks coming in, putting it onto a truck, and just going
Mm-hmm.
away. So is it like the barriers have come a long way because, or the cars have come a long way, or the combination of both? But back in the day, like even 20 years ago, I don't think any car would have survived that kind of a crash. Like no matter what car that was, may it be a
It's
Volvo
all
or
of it. I've actually seen a car crash at Sebring in person in that exact way in that exact corner. Like when I was working for Pirelli Motorsports, I've been standing in that corner and watched a car do exactly what you're talking about, and it's a classic Sebring crash because that first corner. So Sebring was an airfield in World War II before it was a racetrack,
Yeah.
just like kind of like
Saint,
Silverstone in the
also
UK.
like Saint Petersburg.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that corner, it's basically part of like a big concrete patch. The front straight is like this big bumpy patch of concrete, and then you make the left turn, and it actually like turns into a racetrack. But when you're making that left, like there's in theory around the corner, there's probably enough space that you could fit like 12 cars next to each other or something. Like it's just a big wide square. You almost have to guess what the actual track is. But then it just like immediately becomes like a 2-lane racetrack, like right after that. And it's just a brief cutoff. So you're bumping and you're coming around that turn, and maybe there's a car on your inside, or maybe you're just trying to get more speed and track it out as wide as possible. But you really have to intuit where your car is going to be on the exit, because if it bumps you just a little bit wide, you're just out in the dirt because the track just like doesn't continue. It just like ends at a specific spot. But addressing safety, in my opinion, it's all of the above. I mean, you know, I think in history in motorsports, there are probably two things that have killed the most drivers, and that's fire from car accidents and like your neck essentially breaking when you hit something. And when they came out with Nomex suits, and now the FIA and the SCCA and everything, they require, you know, when I bought my race car, I bought my race suit, and I had to buy Nomex. I'm sure this was the same thing when you're karting. Socks, underwear, shirt, everything you're wearing is fireproof. You can basically douse yourself, in gasoline and light yourself on fire, and you wouldn't burn because it's so protective. So, that's one thing. And then the Hans device.
Yeah.
It protecting the head and neck system, it stops most of those other deaths. And, there's fluke things that can happen. And obviously the series are always trying to build this. You mentioned the barriers as well, like the safer barriers. I got to see them in person at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where they have the concrete wall, and then the big, basically a pad of foam, and then the exterior wall that compresses in an accident. All of the above, if it's not like one of those things is going to save your life, but all of them combined will make it more likely. I don't know if you have anything else, Ananya, that you think.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest. And it's always and Uditt, you know this from Formula One, 94 we lost Senna, which over the years they perfected the systems, and then we got to a point where in 2015 everything was good enough, but yet we had Joe Bianchi's accident. After which they did more iterations. They put that aero screen, they did a couple of things with some weird flaps, and then they landed on the halo. And now the halo, you can count the number of times it saved lives so
definitely.
far, right?
Definitely.
At some point, we wouldn't have had Charles Leclerc if we didn't have the halo. So think about it like that. So it's safety that's pushed by the governing body of the sport, of course. But it's also, like Jared had mentioned, the barriers, the tech pro barriers that actually absorb the impact. That I think it was the British Grand Prix of last year when Joe just went bang into the wall, but he just walked out.
Yeah.
Right? And that's your barriers working fine. So it's a combination of things. And even the Romain Grosjean incident, the fire in Abu Dhabi, right? And even with all of those things, his hands were burnt, despite it being a Nomex suit and whatnot. And it's advancements in everything that's prevented it, but then you still have very freak accidents like the one that happened with Delano, for instance. It's a matter of angle of impact.
Hmm.
There's some things that you really just can't solve for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
that's,
think
I
there's
think it's
two.
the nature of it's in the sports DNA, to be honest. That sort of
I think
unpredictability.
I think there's two interesting points about this. Like, first off, I think people are becoming more accepting of safety's part in the sport because there was a time, you can go back and look at interviews of Hamilton saying that he doesn't believe the Halo should be on the Formula One cars,
Yeah.
and then the Halo saves his life in Monza.
Yeah.
And now you would never catch him saying that. The same thing happened with Nomex. I can't confirm the veracity of this story, but I heard a story when I was working in racing that the inventor of the full Nomex race suit was trying to get the IMSA paddock to make it a regulation and make the drivers, before it was required, make the drivers say you should buy this anyways. And the drivers just weren't buying it. They're like, oh, I don't care, it's too expensive, this and that. And he went out into the pit lane, allegedly, went out into the pit lane, poured himself in gasoline, lit himself on fire, and stood there in the pit lane on fire in his Nomex suit, and then had someone spray him with a fire extinguisher and showed the drivers like this is what this will do for you, like this will save your life. And that got people to start accepting it, and eventually they brought it into the sport. But it's those, now you used to have to do something like that. Now I think people would just hear, oh, we're bringing in a fireproof suit, and people are mostly going to accept it.
Yeah.
But then the other interesting point is that the professional racing series have gotten very safe, but people do forget that amateur racing is a lot more dangerous than professional racing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen really terrible accidents in the SCCA. There was a really, really bad accident that happened in Spec Miata at Road America last year, where the Spec Miata field, 50 2001 Mazda Miatas, yes, they all have full body roll cages, but ultimately it's a car from 2001, and it's just a consumer car and a convertible, and it was like a 50 car field. They were coming around a blind corner. One driver got spun around and was stopped backwards on the track. Another driver didn't see him and crashed head on with him when they were stopped backward. Both drivers were hospitalized. I don't think anyone died. I don't know the details, but the point is, people do die, and people that volunteer to work at racetracks. I know at Brands Hatch there was a death last year of one of the marshals, and those are situations that would have been prevented in F1, because F1 has the safety regulations to prevent stuff like that happen, and it wouldn't happen in NASCAR because NASCAR has the regulations, or IndyCar. But the local SCCA series, those tracks are operating on a small budget. They don't have the same regulations. That's why F1 can't race at them. The cars, you try to make them as safe as possible, but they're vintage cars at this point, 20, 30-year-old cars that people are racing in, and the marshals are volunteers. The drivers, they got their licenses from race schools, and you have to trust that they deserve their license. There's a lot more that can go wrong at the amateur level, so it's safer now, but it's still dangerous.
Right. Now let's get the mood a little lighter now. I think
Yeah.
it got a little heavy over there. At least for me, it did. Anyways, so Jared was talking about the differences that he had written down, and I think
Yes.
it's your turn now, Ananya, to mention a difference.
Yeah, this might be a bit of a controversial one, but I've written down that fan culture in the US is far more robust because you have racing heroes that are already formed in your version of the sport, be it NASCAR or Indy or anything, or even maybe at an SCCA level, you have some really big names that really garner that sort of attention from motorsport fans and also people that are new to the sport. But for us in India, I can name a handful of very, very famous people, but do you see fan culture around them? I am not very
I
sure.
mean,
Hmm.
the people who were famous otherwise were like Vijay Mallya. He was a national champion at one point.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. You can pick out a few names from history, right?
Yeah,
Karivardhan,
yeah, 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 yeah.
the literal
Oh no, of
godfather of
course.
Indian motorsport,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
instance. Vicky Chandok, huge name, still. Karan Chandok and Naren Karthikeyan, but would Indians actually rally behind them? Would they understand the story? Would they know what
I
their history
feel
is like? Where did they come from?
I,
We don't have
f-
that.
I feel if Narayan Karthikeyan had a better career in Formula One, things would have been a little different. But since his career was also like, marked with like, I don't even want to use the words. So,
No,
I mean, a few races
fair
were
enough, but
nice,
I
but
think,
like, it on an
yeah,
average, you compare it to any other race car driver, the opportunity is much more, of course. And I'm sure at some point it would have been a sponsorship issue, an investment issue, and all of that. I don't know the whole story of what happened there, but that's what our problem is in a country, is that we don't have that
yeah,
attitude towards
I agree.
spending that money into things that we consider as a leisure activity. That
Hmm.
attitude towards
Mm.
spending your money towards something that is um, traditionally considered leisure is not there. So motorsports automatically becomes a very very tough game
Yeah,
there.
very true. Very true. And not just that, I mean, I think, and I could be wrong here, but if if Andretti had actually managed to put an 11th team in Formula One,
Yeah.
I think you guys as Americans would have absolutely loved that. You would have
Yeah.
enjoyed it. You would have put, I'm sure Kota would be filled with Andretti jackets, for instance.
Yeah.
At least that's what I assume. But in
Yeah.
India, you put an Indian Formula One team, and we had one. We still didn't get that sort of support, even with the name India on the car.
Hmm.
Our
So that's,
it
and that could be an issue with like just, it's very natural for us
yeah,
to just support the
it's
winning guy, the winning team. But
not
Yeah.
just
Well,
that.
I
It's
think
like
that.
we could not, as an audience, as an Indian audience, we could not relate to it because that sport wasn't as accessible to the audience, to the masses.
maybe you could be right there. Yeah.
So
And I
in
think that
yeah,
you. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. I think you touched on something with the winning there. I think that's an important part of it. Like, I do think that if Andretti came, you would get American support at first. But if Andretti
Hmm.
came into the series and they were running around like eighth or ninth in the pack, and
Yep.
like I think you would lose interest with most Americans very quickly. I think if you look at like the
You think so?
heroes, well, yeah, because if you look at like the heroes of American racing, like and I don't think there has been a real hero of American racing since Jeff Gordon in my mind. Like you had, Andretti, like in in when he was racing in F1 and then when he was racing in Indy and kart, that was the real, Mario Andretti is the American F1 champion. That was the thing that everyone cared about. And then you had Dale Earnhardt in
Yep.
NASCAR, and he
NASCAR.
was winning everything. You just couldn't
Yep.
beat Dale Earnhardt. And then Jeff Gordon came in and competed against Dale Earnhardt and they had a major rivalry. And then when Dale Earnhardt passed away, Jeff Gordon kind of adopted that title of the top guy in NASCAR and ran with that for a couple more years. But I don't think that there's really been anyone since then in America that's truly been like an American hero of motorsport, because there hasn't been anybody that's carried on that sustained long-term winning stretch. So I think you're right, but I do think that winning factor is important to Americans as well, I think.
Fair enough,
fair enough. Yeah.
actually. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Back to
you
you,
want
Jared.
to move to the next one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Yeah, Jared. Yeah.
Yeah, I have kind of two that are pretty much the same thing. but like
Mhm.
the race cars, a lot of race cars in the United States, especially at the amateur level, are based on like road cars that you could be driving on a day-to-day basis out on the roads that you see on a regular basis. And then I tied into that also that there's like a very big like amateur car modification, like performance modification culture in the United States towards putting race suspension on cars and tuning engines, even if it's just for the street and stuff like that. And I know that that's kind of rare in a lot of other countries because there's a lot of regulations usually that prevent you from doing that. I am assuming that that's similar in India where it's kind of tough to modify cars and maybe the cars that you see people driving around the city aren't necessarily the same cars that you would see on a racetrack. That's an assumption, but I'd like to hear what the actual experience
I
is.
think
Actually, it might be a
I
similarity,
think you're a
actually.
little wrong there. Yeah, it's a similarity because we have
Yeah.
the Polo Cup, we have the
Yes.
Oh,
Etios Cup, if I'm not
What is it?
Toyota
Yeah,
Etios
the
Cup,
ETOS Cup, the Polo Cup, it's called the Indian
Jimny,
Touring Car Championships.
yeah,
okay.
the
All of
Oh,
Jimny,
that,
wow.
Jimny
they're
Off-Road
road cars,
Challenge,
actually.
Suzuki Jimny Off-Road Challenge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That's very
So,
cool.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and we do have actually a very, very robust culture of car modification and then just driving them out on the street or sometimes putting them
Mhm.
on the racetrack
which you
as
do
well.
get if you get caught by a cop, then it's a different case. But yeah,
Yeah.
people do that a lot. I mean, it's India at the
Yes.
end.
Yeah. Okay. So it's maybe not like technically allowed, but people do it anyways. I mean, it's the same thing in a lot of places. Like California is the same way in the United States. You're basically not allowed to modify your cars in California, but it's got like one of the best tuner car cultures in the United States, and you just get in trouble if you get caught. So, yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead with the next one, Ananya?
Okay. So this is a very, very specific one, but I had put that the amateur karting scene in the US. You guys have seat belts in your go-karts.
Really?
I've seen
I've never been in a
like the
seatbelt go-kart.
recreational car.
Maybe some of them. I don't know. I've never been in a go-kart with a seatbelt before, but that's an interesting that's an interesting note.
It's very
Didn't the
specific, but
go-kart
I
did,
always saw why.
didn't the go-kart we went to at Misano, Jared, had a seatbelt on it?
Did it?
I think it did it like had a full
Oh, it
harness.
actually no, it did. It
Had
had
a full
harnesses when we were in Italy. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. When we raced in
Misano,
Italy. It did.
Misanino.
Misanino, yeah.
Yeah.
But did the second? Oh, you weren't at the second place we went to.
No, I wasn't.
I don't think the second place had them.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, that's weird. I never
Yeah.
really even thought that much about that. That's interesting.
I just found it super weird, and I was trying to understand why we need seatbelts in a go-kart, but it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean,
It does not have a
We're just
suspension,
not
so
used to
might as
it.
well have a belt, you know.
yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Yeah, fair.
You had Jared bouncing around in the go-kart. He had bruises.
Oh yeah, you should see my ribs were like bruised after every race. I gotta get a rib.
Oh yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, my next one is that there aren't many major national series in India that people follow, like a big pro level national series
Yeah.
that people
Facts.
can make it to. I think probably, if I had to guess, you could probably get to like a medium pro level within India before you would have to start looking like internationally to really get to like a series that people consider a top level pro series.
People don't consider much as a top level pro series.
have we have lots of national championships, okay, like tons
Yeah.
of them. There are people in this industry that are like 23-time national champions. Ridiculous number of championships. But I don't know if they themselves would call it like the highest level of racing in a grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it's the highest in the country, and you've got phenomenal talent at that level.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
take that grid and put it, let's say, at an American equivalent, you will definitely see massive.
We don't have cars. We don't have the cars that are racing in these American circuits. Like our fastest track series is probably the IRL,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And these guys are running Indy in their circuit. So,
Yeah. That's true.
and IRL would be comparatively what level? I know like Wolf makes that car, but like if you'd have to compare it like a performance.
Those cars, the Wolf GB08 Thunder cars or whatever,
Yeah.
cars, they're not track cars. So I don't know at what level you would actually put it at, but it's definitely not at the level that.
But they do track racing in India, right? They don't do hill climb in that. They do track.
No, they don't do hill climb. No.
Mm.
But they do use those cars which are built for hill climb, basically.
Yeah.
Hmm. Very weird.
My other difference was actually that the US had a lot of international championships. Only because it's a very viable market and
Mhm.
they do want to capture it. So you've got 3 races of Formula One coming in. Then you have what other series? I'm losing
I
track.
think WEC.
MotoGP.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We have MotoGP coming to India this year again.
Yeah.
I hope.
Does it go to the US? Yes, of course it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do.
There you go.
So yeah, we had Formula One, Formula E, and MotoGP. Have we had anything else in India? I mean, I want to see WRC in India. We have everything for that. Like it's like our country's yeah. It's like our country's natural roads are meant for rally racing. Like that's what it is like.
Exactly. You do the tarmac sections on public roads and it will work just fine.
Yeah, sometimes in the public roads the tarmac section is also missing. That's a different situation, but that also happens quite a bit.
Perfect rally course, what do you think?
Yeah. Anyways, so I think we're left with one difference each.
Yeah.
My other difference turned out to be a similarity.
All right.
I'm filled out.
Mine was covered in the previous section. I mentioned that you have different commissions for different things.
Yeah.
In India, it's just one.
All right. So moving on.